Welcome, friends. We're glad to be with you today. So, today I'm wondering what's on your mind. No, seriously, what's on your mind? Is it something that you would want to create more of in your life? That's an important question. Is what's on your mind what you wish to create more of in your life? So our talk title this morning is What's on Your Mind? Are you ready for some questions?
Yeah, it sounds like consciousness, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. So the first idea that we wanted to talk about today is that same idea of what's on your mind, and is it what you want to create more of in your own life? So we look at the idea are you moving through your day in fear, anxiety, lack, and unrest and calling it a life?
Mary Oliver says something very similar. She says, listen, are you breathing just a little and calling it a life? What is your life experience and what are you putting into it? What are you thinking into your life and what are you holding as your truths? And is that what's out picturing in your life? And if it is it something you want to experience or is it not? What's on your mind? Is it something you want to create or it's something you would like to change?
Yes, so usually when we're thinking anything to do with fear, anxiety, lack, limitation, usually those ideas are not something that we want to create more of. And so it's important for us to catch them, to sort of become aware enough of what we're thinking about, and do something about it. So if we find ourselves thinking about happy things, then we're good to go. But if we find ourselves repeatedly thinking of something that's negative, then we have to find a way to switch our own mind, or we will physically make ourselves sick with those thoughts and ideas, because our body releases chemicals that either help us or do us harm. So we have to look for ways to laugh, and we're pretty good at that. We very often will just laugh at what someone else might think is nothing at all, or something that's just plain corny, but we just laugh. We even have a great sense of humor about laughing about each other. And for some people that might not work, but for us, we know that it's all well-intentioned. We know that it's all in love, and we know the importance of laughing.
That's true. When you're laughing, it's kind of hard to be sad.
That's very true, yes. So what are you calling your life? And I invite you to call it good. Another way to operate this thing called life through our own thinking is the faculty of love, the essence of love in our life. Do you think about the things that you love, and does that move you into a greater idea? Are you able to maybe take a walk on the beach or just sit in your yard and look at nature and feel the love of God all around you growing and flowing?
I believe that love is a unifying force in the universe, and it's kind of interesting. They both start with unity. It's creating oneness, and love is an idea that connects everything together. When we start to have our individualized opinions and beliefs about things, we tend to separate from others, and the sense of unity decays. And so we fall into a state of unlovingness. When we begin to love one another, we begin to see things similarly, or at least to understand from another perspective and appreciate that perspective. And so we begin to love life. We begin to unify in life together.
Yes. So connecting those two, the idea of laughter and of love, throughout this summer, since we've been more social distanced, and David and I've done a lot of isolating actually, we have spent time just floating around in the pool. And we weave back and forth between visiting and laughing and sharing and communicating, and so that's a lot of fun. And sometimes when and pondering, because we love to just lay there silently by ourselves and ponder or meditate or pray for anyone that we know is in need of prayer. And so sometimes one of us will kind of sneak up on the other one and surprise them, and that will give us another opportunity to laugh and to play, to be playful, yes, to love one another. And another idea that moves us into calling our life a great life is a sense of gratitude. So we can be grateful for those times. So I have another one. This one's a little bit heavier than looking at our own life in that way of moving our thinking into joy, love, gratitude, laughter. And this one is an Ernest Holmes quote, and it says, "Law knows how to make things out of ideas."
It's important to remember that we're part of the co-creative process, and we create the same way that God does in the universe. We hold energy, and we hold that as our truth, and we sustain it with faith, and therefore it materializes in our lives. Law knows how to make things out of those ideas, those belief systems, the faith ideas that we hold as true values in our life. And the law responds to that accordingly. The law is not something that decides what we want and then creates that for us. It's a co-creative process. We are part of the whole process, and through our thoughts, we create the reality that we experience.
Yes, and so the universe is full of laws, and a lot of the scientific laws we're familiar with. And it's really important for us to get a grasp on spiritual laws, things like the law of cause and effect. And those ideas, the cause and effect laws, help us to make things happen in our life, because law always says yes. That impersonal law must do in accordance with the idea that is placed into it. So another idea for you. God must become an activity in our consciousness.
That's by Joel Goldsmith. It's the idea that if we want to experience things in our life, if we want to change conditions in our life, we have to hold a consciousness of that, and we must know that we are part of that co-creative process. And so therefore God, law, God energy, universal energy, whatever you want to call it, must become an activity, must become active in our consciousness and be an active part of our awareness in life. If we want to create new things, we have to be aware of the possibility, and then we have to activate it through our thought processes. So God must become an activity in our consciousness.
Yes, an activity in our consciousness that moves us into activity in the physical realm.
Yes.
And so I love that idea. And quite often for me, if I am happening to feel negative in the way of feeling tired or overwhelmed or like I have too much to do, I will just give it all up and say, okay, I'm going to let God do this. And it's God through me, God operating through me. But something releases when you embrace those words with a feeling back of them that says, yeah, I give up. All the angst, I give up. I willingly release it and let it go. And I walk in this moment. I take just this. Some people like to say that I take as just take one whelm at a time. Yes.
Yes, I also believe that what we're giving up is not the responsibility. We're giving up the angst, as you said about that. We're giving up the fretting and the worrying and the feeling that we have to do something, the urgency to make it happen. We still hold the responsibility and the awareness of what we wish to experience, but we release the activity into the universal law and let it happen.
Yes, and I like that word you just used, the urgency. we quite often hear people, especially in leadership, saying to take action with urgency. And that can bring on, or not, an overwhelming feeling of a strenuous importance.
Yes.
And yet at the same time, when we live with a sense of purpose, urgency of purpose, then there's no angst about it or around it.
I like the term joyous expectancy.
Yes. And also the idea that urgency corresponds with the idea of emergency in the negative aspect, but if we look at that word a little deeper, we find the word emerge. So your urgency is in an idea of emerging, of becoming something that you desire to be, to experience, to have.
Something that emerges, just kind of grows into our experience. It's not something we have to pull into strenuously.
Yes. And again, anything that feels good and feels right, it's probably because it is. So anything more you want to say about those thoughts?
I'm good with those.
Okay, well, let's conclude with this last one. I will not let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet.
That's true. And you know, sometimes we walk through our own mind and our own dirty feet, and we're the ones that have to clean it up afterwards. So maintain the purity of thought, the purity in the mind, and then we don't have to clean it up.
Yes, so, you know, when I was a young girl, my parents had a humongous garden, and we each had to take so many rows and weed them regularly. And I could not stand getting dirt in my fingernails. It just would dry up and it felt yucky, and I like to have pretty fingernails. And so I used to do it with my toes. I would weed the garden with my toes, and my toes became very strong. I have some pretty strong feet from weeding the garden. So don't let anyone walk through your mind with their dirty feet. And if you need to use your feet to weed the weeds from the garden of your mind, then go for it, baby. Okay, well, what's on your mind? I hope at this point it's something joyous, something loving, something fun, something fabulous, and you are emerging and becoming that something that you love.